Yes, I am a master gardener. I'm also a homeowner in Collin County. I have Rose Rosette disease. It's like, I feel like I'm at AA. I'm also a commercial landscaper. I live in an HOA. So we're going to talk about what we're going to do now that we've safely removed all of our roses and kind of where we can go from here. So again, we have our wonderful witch's broom. So I want to grow roses again. I've taken them out in so many places, so many commercial sites. I took out my last Peggy Martin just this last weekend at my home. I want my roses back. So we can't do anything. I'm one step ahead of you. You really can't replant your roses if you don't get out there and talk to your neighbors and have them safely remove their roses as well. So you need to get everybody to join this alliance. You can't in your home garden, even if you get all your neighbors to remove those, because your HOA entrance is still filled with diseased roses. You can't in a commercial setting if other complexes around you are infested with roses. We recently removed beds and beds of knockout roses up at a complex on Legacy in Plano. We wanted to replant roses, but the complexes across the street, down the street, they were all infected. So we went in with some other materials and it looks even better. So you get the drift here. You need to join the alliance. When you go back into your rose gardens, minus the roses, make sure you use a mixture of plant materials so that you create year-round interest and enjoyment. That's why you planted your roses, because they're mostly evergreen in this area. They bloom most of the time. That's what you want to recreate. The mix of your plants should include plants that have the same water and light requirements as your roses did. This is the same bed that you were using before. You know that it needs a lot of sun, or it gets a lot of sun. You know that it needs very little water. Those were the requirements for your roses. So let's mimic that in what we replace temporarily, because we do want our roses back. I will add that again. Leave pockets in your new landscaping so that you can come back in and put more roses after everybody gets sensible about this and we get rid of this awful disease. You need to add interesting texture and color and different sizes of plants. I think that's what we were really missing when we came in, particularly with all the knockouts, is we took a plant that wants to be 6 foot by 6 foot, planted it 2 feet apart, and pruned it to be 3.5 feet. And that was just one. That's not very interesting. So again, let's replant with plants that are different shapes, sizes, textures. And then we could pocket plant with roses again that are the right size for that area. Always research the potential size of the plant in order to minimize maintenance. Again, your 6 foot knockout rose that we want to keep at 3.5 feet, that's really a waste of your time and your money. So we're going to show you some plants that are going to stay within different areas that are going to be a little bit more maintenance free than trying to keep these shrubs in one nice fancy row. Diane?
Okay. Hi, I have the fun part. Everybody else got to talk about disease, and now I'm going to show you pictures of plants. I don't want you to think that I believe there's a direct substitute for a rose, because really roses, there's nothing that compares with a rose. We'd all like to have them. But I found some plants that I think you'll be able to use that will give you some of the same effects. I look for plants that, in general, you know, some of these don't all do this, but in general they have flowers, They have flowers that bloom for a good period of time, not just a couple weeks, although I did have to throw in one that blooms just a few weeks. I just couldn't pass it up. I'm not going to give you a lot of detail about the plants. You have a handout with the plants on it, with the botanical name and the common name. To speed things up and not embarrass myself, I'm going to use the common name while I'm speaking. But you do have botanical names there, so when you want to go out and get the plants, you can find them correctly. I figured that would be better if I just could pronounce all the words. I think I can say all the common names all right. Okay, Glossolalia. This is something that I've never really used, but I think I'm going to need to put it in. It flowers basically from late spring until fall. There are a lot of different varieties of Glossolalia. These are just 3 of them. Edward Goucher is another one that's used a lot here. They come in a variety of sizes, which you can check out. They may send up a random shoot now and then, which you can cut down to the ground. But other than that, there isn't an incredible amount of maintenance that goes with these. Rose of Sharon, or Althea. This is an old-time plant. The bush that I'm showing you, the shrub that's up there, it's not the most beautiful location for one, but it does show you it's growing in a little tiny strip of grass next to a parking lot. And I figured if it could grow there, it can probably grow in your yard. You can see that it comes in a variety of colors. They're usually 10 to 12 feet tall, but there are dwarf varieties that won't get more than, I think, 4 feet maybe. So I think that one's definitely worth looking into. The only problem that I was really aware of is that they are they are susceptible to cotton root rot. So if you take out a plant for cotton root rot, don't put a Rose of Sharon in its place. Okay, butterfly bush. This is another plant that comes in a variety of sizes. Usually about 8 feet tall. Probably averages, one place I read the average was 4 to 6 feet. But they can get much bigger than that. They definitely come in a variety of colors. You had to throw the butterflies in. They do get that name legitimately. But there are dwarfs that will stay under 4 feet. These do better if you deadhead them, but let me give you a little plug here. We have a perennial research garden up in Myers Park, and we have butterfly bush there. We do no maintenance during the year. We only trim in February, and it blooms all year even without the maintenance. In your yard it would look better if you deadhead it, but it does okay. Texas sage. City of Salina just replaced all their knockout roses with Texas sage. It took us a while to convince them, but they did it, so we're really proud of them. Lynn's Legacy blooms a lot more than the others because it's not so dependent on the barometer. It's sometimes called barometer bush, and so Texas sage tends to bloom a little more after rain, but it'll bloom sporadically during the summer and into fall. There are different colors. There's a white blooming one. There's some pinks. They're usually a violet color, lavender or violet color. Usually around 5 feet tall, although they can get to 8 feet. There is a compact variety that's a little bit smaller, not a lot. Okay, pomegranate. Now there's standard pomegranate, which can grow to a tree size, a small tree, and there are compact ones. This one gives you, now this one's been pruned. They don't naturally grow quite that round. It has the beautiful reddish-orange flowers that will persist during the summer, and then the fruit appears, and you get the fruit on the trees, on the shrubs for a while. On the compact varieties, you can't actually eat the fruit, but it's usually considered, well, there's so much work getting the fruit, it's just not worth your while. But it is a beautiful flower. And a lot of these plants are plants that attract butterflies and hummingbirds. So if you have clients who want a butterfly garden, you've got a lot of varieties for you. Esperanza, or yellow bells. This is not considered a perennial in Collin County. This is a Zone 9 plant. We have it in our perennial trial garden because all of our master gardeners said, well, mine comes back. So we put it in the garden. We put it in the garden in 2010, and it's come back every year. Mine up in Salina in the north half of the county has come back every year since 2002. So don't sell it to someone as a perennial. You know, keep your fingers crossed. But we sell it as an annual at our plant sale and grow it as a perennial in our trial garden. Beautiful yellow flowers. It's late to come out in spring. You have to be aware of that. If you put this in your yard, cut it down in winter, cut it to the ground. It does come out late, so don't get carried away in March or April 1st or April 10th and dig it out and throw it away. Wait a little longer. Okay, orange zest. I'm sorry about the pale color on that. It was a little hazy the day we took that picture up in the garden. This will grow, this is cestrum. It will grow about 5 feet tall, 4 feet wide. It blooms all season, has those little orange tubular flowers. This was a real surprise for us. Most of us didn't know anything about this plant. We needed more plants in the trial garden, and this was suggested. We put it in, and it's done well for us. This year we actually cut it to the ground, though, because of the winter we had last year. The year before we didn't. It came back on the old wood, but this year we cut it all the way down, and it's come back. Last year we cut it down, and it came back well. It's supposed to smell like oranges in the evening. Okay, the park closes at 5, so none of us really know. See, even the program likes that plant and wants to just leave it up there. Okay, you're all familiar with red yucca, which isn't really a yucca. About 3 feet by 3 feet, maybe bigger for the plant, and then the flower spike, 5, 6, 8 feet. Depends on how happy yours is. There's also a yellow flowering variety. It's a little bit harder to find in the nurseries, but more places are carrying it. So if you like to have a plant not everybody else has, get a yellow flowering one. And then there's a new one called Break Lights, which is smaller and has a redder flower. The inset down there is the coral-colored regular red yucca, and a Break Lights is the darker red. So that's a little bit smaller plant. Then there's some yuccas. Now these, they do flower. They're interesting to look at the way they are. They're evergreen. Not everything I've been showing you is evergreen. So you do want to put some plants in that will be more than sticks in the winter. So the yuccas will cover that for you. There's Color Guard and Bright Edge. They're both about, I'd say 2 feet by 2 feet, maybe a little bit bigger for the plant, and then a flower spike above that. The twist leaf yucca is a smaller plant, 1 to 2 feet. And the twist leaf, it's not twisted when you get it new. It doesn't twist till it's older. So don't think they did something to you at the nursery. The twist leaf yucca also is softer on the tips than the others. So normally with yuccas, you don't want to plant them by your sidewalks unless you really don't want anyone coming to your house. Hardy hibiscus. Now this is another plant that has a multitude of colors available for you. They will just be sticks in the winter, so you'll cut them to the ground. They look similar to the tropical hibiscus, except they'll be there next year. So we've got Flare and Moy Grande, Moy Grand, named after Dr. Moy. Peppermint Flare, those all have green leaves. Hopper King is interesting, it has the burgundy leaves. These also come in different sizes. Most of them are going to be fairly large, like 6 to 8 feet. And then there's Texas Star Hibiscus. It does come in white also. Again, it's a little harder to find the white. I don't know why you wouldn't want red, but that's just me. Okay. Be aware that when your homeowners association calls the police on you, it does look like a marijuana plant until the flowers show up. I said, this is so much nicer than talking about disease. And that's more necessary. This is just more fun. Okay, rock rose. Well, I assume it kind of gets the name because it looks a little bit like a rose. This will bloom all summer. It takes the heat well. Really dark pink flower, looks like a hibiscus flower up close. It's not going to be beautiful in winter. It's either going to be semi-evergreen or deciduous, depending on the winter. Okay. And then we have rosemary. Now this is the edible rosemary. This one is Hills Hardy. Hills Hardy and Arp are the two that are the most cold tolerant that give you this appearance. There are also trailing ones and all sorts, but this is done well up in our gardens too. It can get to be 5 feet by 5 feet. There's a tiny blue flower that appears usually about now. It should start showing up, or a little bit later. You're not really buying it for the flowers. Now the one thing you need to know though is that it's flammable. So if it's in your kitchen garden, you might want to move that a little further away from your house. You know, it's not going to spontaneously combust or anything, but for those of us who live in the country, we're a little more aware of keeping those plants away from the house in case of a wildfire. Okay, flame acanthus. Okay, this is deciduous. Now you can either trim it back in winter, you can leave it the way it is, or you can cut it all the way to the ground. It has the orangish red tubular flower. It attracts hummingbirds, so I had to put one in for you. This blooms all summer. It doesn't care that it was 110 degrees a couple summers ago during the drought, 110 degrees, and it was blooming. Flowers were a little smaller, but it was still blooming. All of the plants that I've been talking about will go in the place where a rose goes. They're full sun to part shade plants. So they would fit where you had a rose. Now because roses come in all sizes, we had to find some plants in different sizes too. I didn't put in any climbers though, so you're on your own to find a climber. It just dawned on me now that that should have been there. And then autumn sage. If you don't have autumn sage, you need it. It comes in lots of different colors. They're more than this, but these are the fairly standard ones. Salvia gregae. It'll get about 3 feet by 3 feet. It's a woody perennial, so you'll need to do some pruning on it. There are all different ways you can prune it. You can cut it down to like about 6 inches in winter. You can cut it once or maybe even twice during the growing season, or if you don't want to do that much trimming, if you just you can do some really pick and prune things where you look at, oh, that stem over there has really gotten woody, I better trim that off. It depends on the appearance you want and how much work you want to do. It does attract hummingbirds and butterflies. And then lantana, lots of lantanas. Now, this is the same type of thing with the Esperanza. Lantanas normally are not considered perennial in the Dallas area. Now, the Texas Lantana is. That's more cold hardy than the others. The Lantana Camaro, which Pink Caprice and the New Gold are both that, are not considered perennial here, but most of us have had great luck with them coming back year after year. So again, I wouldn't sell it to someone as a perennial, but if they bought it as an annual, I'd tell them there's a really good chance it's going to come back, but I can't guarantee it. New Gold is sterile, so it's going to produce more flowers all summer than the other ones are because it doesn't have to take time to produce the fruit. The fruit is poisonous. Uh-oh. I missed one. Huh? Did I miss another one?
Yeah.
Whoa, I must have hit it really hard. They have more?
Back.
No, that's the wrong way. Uh-oh. No! I've never done a talk where I haven't had an equipment problem. I was tapping.
Turk's cap?
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yay!
Okay, use there. Thank you.
All right. Okay, here's the miracle plant. Turk's cap will grow in sun, it will grow in shade and bloom. It can grow in dry soil, it can grow in wet soil. So if you can't find a place for Turk's cap, I don't know what you've got in your yard. Okay. These are grown in very, very limited, with very limited watering, like we watered once during the drought years. There is a red variety and there's a pink variety now called Camphor. They're nice shrubs, about, I would estimate 4 feet by 4 feet. They will get bigger than that, especially in the sun. They get a little leggier in the shade, but the leaves look prettier. They don't bloom quite as much in the shade, but they do still bloom. It's another hummingbird plant. They do die to the ground in winter, so you'll trim them down in late winter. I did it again.
That's right.
That's right? All right. I'm sorry. This is an interactive program. Okay. Fall Aster. Now this is the one that doesn't bloom real long. It's going to give you about 3 weeks in October. But it's so beautiful. Surely you can find a spot to put that plant. Catmint. This is going to bloom all season. It does have some periods of heavier blooming, but it does keep blooming. It's, I'd say, semi-evergreen. It really does better in sun. I have one right now that's in too much shade, and it's alive, it's blooming, but it's telling me it needs to go somewhere else. They get really about, I'd say, 2 feet tall. We have some that are now up to 5 feet wide, but you can maintain it pretty easily at a little rounder size. Okay. Now another salvia. This is Salvia farinacea, Henry Duelberg, and Augusta Duelberg. They'll get to be at least 3 feet by 3 feet. They have bigger. They bloom more than the standard Salvia farinacea. The flowers are bigger. You can actually shear it to promote even more blooms. Found on the grave of Henry Duelberg in Central Texas. So, as Greg Grant says, if dead people can grow it. Skeleton leaf goldeneye. This may be one you're not familiar with. It's got a funny name, but it's a really pretty plant. It makes a nice mound. A lot of times you'll read that it's an evergreen plant. It's really more semi-evergreen here. But pretty yellow flowers. It blooms all summer, blooms heavily in fall. Okay, there are some grasses. Now I put grasses in not because of the beautiful flowers, although they do flower, and that's what the pretty part that you're looking up at the top. But grasses are so nice to use because you get the movement. The wind blows and they're moving in the wind, and also you have that winter interest. When you do trim them, you're not going to trim them until the end of winter. So just leave them there, and they're really pretty to look at. And there's another one, Maiden Grass. This one's Adagio. The Lindheimer's Muhly is going to be about 4 feet tall, and then, or 3 to 4 feet tall, and then with the seed heads, it'll be about 6 feet. Normally, you just see the Lindheimer's Muhly in the nurseries, not the autumn glow, as far as I know. The Maiden Grass, this is supposed to be a dwarf. Adagio is a dwarf, but it's still going to be, it's about a 3-foot clump, and then with the flowers, it's going to be about 4 feet tall, at least. All right, so I hope you see some things that you may want to put into your yard. At some point, you will be landscaping, and now you know you're not going to do a massive planting of roses. You're going to have to find some other plants to put there, and I hope you'll consider some of these. There are a lot of sources for plants that you can look at. I put some websites on the bottom of the handout to help you with some other plant selections.